In today's episode, Aileen and Nancy define, discuss, and embrace neurological diversity. Welcome to Expansive Minds Podcast, Gateway to Freedom, a podcast where two friends, Aileen and Nancy, explore and expand beyond what they think they know in order to live a life of freedom. Thank you for joining us, and away we go. Hi.
Hi.
I don't know, what are you thinking?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I think we're coming out of our hypervigilance tension, pulling ourselves together for a pandemic, whether you believed it or not. The energy was still there.
Yeah.
You know, we've had some tough political cycles. Now we're like, come on, you just want to go Russia. Come on, not now. Like we're trying to recuperate.
Yeah.
We're trying to recover. Can we just get a break? I think that's a lot of what people are feeling. Can we just get a break? Can it just be smooth for a little bit?
Right. And one of my favorite channelers, can't even remember the station, her name is Blossom, and she's always so uplifting. And she started the channel by saying, I don't know if I should be doing this now because I really do not feel positive at the moment. Mm-hmm. And so she's basically having this conversation with her spiritual being, and he's saying, be patient. And she's like, right, like, so you've said before. So you've said before. So you've said before. And it was just like, she was practically flipping off her soul being, going, I'm ready.
I've had enough.
Done. You keep saying it's time, we're ascending, you know, and nothing has changed, and nothing, all the tools you gave me, nothing seems to be helping. And not that I was celebrating her discomfort.
Right, but we love, because it's like, yes, same.
Because I feel that way. And
Totally.
then one of the old patterns that I would fall into is like, well, clearly I'm not as spiritually evolved as I thought I was if I'm in the gutter here.
It'd be better. Exactly. Well, this is what I posted on my, I just felt it yesterday morning, and a lot of people were like, yeah, absolutely. So this is what I posted yesterday. Has anyone felt that they've been tricked and fooled by the universe, and not necessarily in a good way? I know, me too. Sometimes it's difficult to remember, more to be revealed.
That's fantastic. And yes, that is the way I have been feeling coming out of the weekend. I'm like, this manifestation stuff is bullcrap. Nothing's working. Nothing. I felt, and then I had some old pain bodies, as Eckhart Tolle would say. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm back where I was when I started this journey 12 years ago. Yes. Have I evolved? Not at all. I'm still saying the same words I said 12 years ago. What the heck is going on?
One of the challenges is, again, it's our brain, right? And how we do linear time. We're still locked into linear time. And this story of moving forward, like all of that comes into play. And how I see it is the more we lighten our room. So imagine you're standing in a room. It's your room. It's your life. It's your room. And you're cleaning areas, and you're cleaning here, and you're cleaning here, and you're bringing more light in, right? A big flashlight. And the more you clean the gunk away, the more gunk you're going to see. So at this point, when we feel that we've come to a level of a spiritual, like, okay, cool, I think I'm on a roll here. I think I got this, you know? I think I got it, the feel for this, right? Not like, I don't mean like an egotistical,
right? Not like I'm an evolved grandmaster.
Correct.
In Tibet.
Correct. It's just sort of the regular folk of us who are like, yeah, I think I got the hang of this. I'm having some good moments. And then all of a sudden, what it is that the dark little thing in the corner that we didn't even know was there because everything was so mucked up, then we see that.
Yes.
And that can make us feel like, what?
That's helpful.
What does that still do? What is that there? And it's like, oh, no, it's just because you've brought more light in the room.
Fantastic.
You can see more. So it's...
Yes. That's exactly what Cryon's theme has been. The light is shining brighter than ever. And it lets you see more dirt.
Yes. And that actually makes me think about, while you were talking, something I thought, like, oh, here's the thing we could really grab onto today. I'm noticing that a lot of people, older people in particular, in their 50s, are discovering things about themselves that they didn't know before. So, and it can happen all along the way.
Well, I'm in that demographic, so do tell.
So people who didn't know they were on certain spectrums, let's say, they didn't know they had a particular neurodiversity, are realizing
Like you're being kind.
and they're realizing it now, and they're like, oh, but it feels really comforting. At first it's a little sad and strange when they think, I didn't know I had ADHD. I didn't know I had a level of autism. I didn't know I had that this was Tourette's. And again, I'm not super into labels. However, I think saying this, if you give it just you could call it anything, gobbledygook. I don't care what you call it.
Yeah.
But it's a way to identify how our brains work.
Some of the ways our brains work that we then do label often as a disorder or a dysfunction, I actually think is more of an evolved way for the brain to work. We're finding now that we're moving into this new paradigm and we are activating more strands of the DNA that maybe it is not a hampering thing. It's better insight into this new dimensionality that we're moving into.
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of it comes from, oh, let's see if we can get you to be compliant with society, and I'm the person, we all say, us, white men in this, we say this is how you should be. If you're not this, you must be a disorder. And it's like, no, like you one person or you collective of the college of,
Yes.
all us are the best. You don't get to say what is normal and how we're supposed to get there. It's like, no, not at all. I say to people with, things like ADHD or something, and I'll say, look, we need you. You were made to be the person who runs around from tree to tree outside of the village to make sure no lions come and get us. You were the ones that could stay up late and were excited and jazzed up to run around and keep us all safe so we could sleep. And now we're taking you and saying, sit in this chair.
Right.
And listen to this boring diatribe that we're calling education. But there's something wrong with you.
Right. Because those my messages of education that I think are right aren't landing for you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think I'm seeing people wake up to all sorts of things about themselves. It's wonderful, and it also can be difficult because we have a story of who we think we are. And I'll share this. This happened to me a while ago, so maybe 15 years ago, and I'm 58 now. I knew I had a lot of energy as a child. My mother was wise enough not to send me to kindergarten because she knew I couldn't sit still. She was correct. I was also very lucky to have a first grade teacher, Mrs. Camarada was her name, who understood me immediately. I never thought there was anything, quote unquote, wrong with me. She knew to say to me, Aileen, would you please pick up all the pencils from the other students' desks? Aileen, would you please water the plants? She always was giving me things to do.
Yeah.
Because she knew. And never in a million years did I think. I thought she thought I was the best student in the class, actually.
She probably did.
I'm going to take that with me.
Yeah.
So years after that, as an adult, my mother sent me all my medical records. And on my when I was 3 years old and had a medical, your checkup, the doctor had written hyperactive across the front of the paper with like an underline, And I thought, interesting. Okay, I could see that. I used to jump up and down all the time. That was sort of my claim to fame. I was always jumping up and down all the time. And it wasn't until, like I said, about 15 years ago that I started to realize, and I'm going to say again, a lot of older adults are doing this process that I did 15 years ago, that I started to realize that there was a judgment and a putting people really in these places as if it was a problem. Right. So I was a director of faith development in a liberal church, and I asked the education committee, to come with me to a workshop about how to integrate children with special needs into your church program. So as we got there, as a bunch of people were all circled around, and the woman, Sally Patton, was amazing. She had us to do an introductory activity. So she handed us all index cards and she said, don't turn it over, just keep it face down. And when I tell you to turn it over, you can turn over. She said, when you turn it over, you're going to read something and you're going to take on that characteristic. You're going to take on that action and mingle around with each other. Okay. And then we'll sit down and then you'll talk about that, what that experience was like. So I've done many things like this. I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I know what's going to happen. We're going to have some special needs we have to experience. So she said, 1, 2, 3, turn it over. And I turned mine over and it said, jumping up and down in place. And I just thought, oh my gosh, because on the way over to the workshop, I thought in my mind, I might get a chance to share that, as in my mind, like, as just like a normal, regular person as a child, I jumped up and down all the time. So maybe I'll find an opportunity to share that I had so much energy, I jumped up and down all the time and that it wasn't a problem and that kind of thing. So to read the card that I got that said jump up and down, I thought, honestly, my heart sank a little bit and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a special needs. I was a special needs kid. Like, what? What is happening here? But I got up and jumped up and down when people talked to me, as my card said. And then it was my turn to share. Nancy, I just busted out laughing. And I said, I was going to tell you all that as a child, I did this thing and it was normal. And I go, and that's what my card said. So how did I feel doing this? Completely normal. I felt completely regular. Yeah. But it was a really interesting realization. And there was a handful of years later, I was at another workshop, and I was sitting in a hard chair. And it was in someone's living room, and so all different kinds of chairs. And I was loving the hard chair. I'm leaning back on it, working on my back. I'm just kind of like moving and listening. And then we had a lunch break, and my friend, who was in a soft, low chair next to me, so kind. He looked at me and said, Aileen, would you like to switch chairs after lunch? And in my mind,
he wanted your chair.
I'm thinking he wants my chair. And I said, oh, exactly, Nancy. I said, oh, and I laughed. I said, are you afraid you're going to fall asleep after lunch in that cozy chair? And then he looked and he said, well, no, you just seem so uncomfortable in your chair because you're moving so much. And I thought, what? And then again, this one was the same thing, around 15. And I looked at everyone else. I said, no, I'm okay, David. Thank you. And then I watched everybody, Nancy, and no one was moving in their chairs.
Yeah.
And I called my sister after. I said, did you know that people can sit still and not move in their chairs during like an hour talk?
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't even know that happened. I can't do that.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
So people are realizing, and I think moving into kindred places with people who are like them, so they're not feeling isolated, like, because inherent in that, we do get negative feedback from people around us.
Sure.
People did try to scold me about my jumping, but I had these positive people that were like, that's not a big deal.
So now I had the exact opposite experience. Growing up, I was very good at staying in the lines because if you didn't, there was punishment.
Right.
So then I had these 3 magnificent children, and each of them are incredibly diverse in their neurological processing. They all do it different. And they're all of course, as a mother, all my 3 are geniuses. But they all are, and they're all out of the lines. So it was sort of fun for me, and actually encouraged them to go out of the lines because I wish I did, but no regrets. But I saw how I built my life around staying in the lines and behaving the way other people thought I should behave. When you said we have this awakening to maybe some of our neurological dysfunction, my neurological dysfunction was to be neurologically sound.
Right.
Was to behave the way everybody thought I should behave. And I was a master at it. I was valedictorian. I was Miss Catholic girl. I went to church. I was the lector to church. I did everything that they asked of me. And I will not put that on my children. So when I see little bursts of, I can't sit in this restaurant, Ma, can you pay the check? I need to go outside. I celebrate it. Or one of my children, when they would be asked a question in school, their eyes would roll up to the top of their head. And delayed processing. Well, guess what? My kid was actually processing many steps ahead.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just like she was answering this question. She had already answered this question in her mind and was thinking 4 more steps ahead to the outcome of the problem, to the ultimate solution. So she was actually an overprocessor. And then just recently my son called and he's like, I have to pick these classes for the next term. And I'm really drawn to this class. It looks exciting to me, but I don't think it's going to be a class that an employer will care about. And maybe I should pick a class the employer cares about. I said, sweetie, follow your heart. Follow your heart. I said, because when you get out in a couple years, who knows what an employer is going to look like. And frankly, if you follow your heart, you're going to shine so bright that it doesn't matter what the employer thinks he's looking for. You're going to just shine over it. So
Exactly.
I am thrilled now that my 3 children are exactly what I wasn't. And it's so fun for me to celebrate it and to join in what I feel like I might have missed in my child. I'm not. I'm celebrating it through them.
Well, so here's my question to you. How much are you going out of the lines now? Because it's about your...
Oh my Christ, look, we're doing a podcast
you're
on
doing great.
freaking alien. This is about as out of the line as it gets, right? For me. But interesting. Yeah, no, there are still some fears. This, as you know, before we took on this podcast, I had some resistance to what we call the woo-woo side, letting people know my woo-woo side. I'm an engineer. I stay in the lines. I'm logic, I'm reason. But then fantastically, a lot of these spiritual teachers were engineers.
Absolutely.
So it almost validated, and also that engineering background, while I kind of didn't enjoy it while I did it, I mean, it got me. It was exactly what I needed because now I understand these energetic concepts more. So I think it's helped me be where I am now. I think the journey, which I initially thought, well, I'm going to just be an engineer because that's what my dad says, because my dad was an engineer and I'll make a lot of money at it. And so I'll just do it. And now it's just kind of like, I think I was an engineer to do a podcast with Aileen in my 50s.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's still some fears.
Right.
In general. It's funny. This morning I pulled a fairy card. We haven't talked about my beautiful fairies, but this morning I pulled a fairy card and it said something about afraid to jump. And so this fairy was kind of clinging to a bush and sort of a tree limb, ready to jump, but not yet ready. And basically was like, wait till the time is right. Wait till the time is right. We will tell you it is time. And when it comes time to jump, you'll feel such magic that it almost won't be a decision. You just simply will be kind of caught up in it. So not sure what the next thing I'm supposed to jump into the air with.
But you're willing to jump.
I'm willing to jump,
piece.
but I would love to be more confident in my intuition and know that when I feel an inclination to something, it is intuition and not generated by previous fears or beliefs. Esther Hicks would say, when she felt inspired to do something, she'd say, okay, where was I? What was I doing? What does she call it? What influence? That's what she uses the words. What influence was I under when I had this desire to move in this direction? Because there are different influences floating around in the field, and so you want to make sure that you are following the influence of the highest frequency. So that's something she asks herself throughout the day. Oh, what influence was I under when I received this thought? Was it an uplifting one or maybe an older, energetic, lower one?
And some of those are in walking in the lines, being in the lines of other people's stories. The fairy thing, all of a sudden this came to my mind many years ago, when I was living full-time on Nantucket and my kids were little. It was a dark,
stormy night.
It was a dark, stormy night. Their dad went away. I think he went to a golf tournament or something. He was away for the weekend. And I think he must have taken the kids with him because somehow he took the kids to do something on a weekend. I stayed home and I chose to paint the upright piano that we had. I painted it.
The piano itself?
The piano itself.
Okay.
I painted it and I drew fairies all over it.
That's so funny.
And our animals that we had at the time, I made them into fairies. So our dog Coco had fairy wings on. Everyone had little fairy wings on, and I splatter painted it, and it was so adorable. And when he came home, he was horrified. But I thought
yeah.
it was great. But this is like the difference, right? So culturally. And then many years later, when we were living in, the girls and I were in Bedford, so they could go to school at the Waldorf School in Lexington. So we were on the mainland and he was still in Nantucket. We were looking at buying a house, a house in particular in Bedford. And it was on the Great Road. And then the house had a fence, like a big wooden fence, to keep the backyard safe and everything. And so when he and I were talking on the phone, I said, well, if we were able to get that house, that would be great. I would paint that. I'm looking forward to painting that fence with the word love on it and painting fairies all over it.
And so he was like horrified again?
Horrified again. Oh. Now I will say to this many, many, many years later. So that was not many, that would have been the late 90s. And I would say now he would absolutely support that because of his own evolution. But at the time, the idea that he could own a house that had love and fairies all over it,
and I also,
was too much.
As a Bedford resident, I don't know that Bedford would have been ready for that either.
I would have done it anyway because, for me.
Out of the lines.
That's the other part, the gift. So this is if we look at the gift when we realize, oh, I have this. This is how my brain works. Yes. I have that ADHD autism combo, which is great because I am like Vulcan, from Star Trek, which is great. Yes. And so I am really clear, and I've always been very clear. So again, this is this wild, how did this happen to me? And raised in a Catholic school, which was very beneficial to me in a lot of ways, some funky, but some good, that I would have no problem. I went to Bedford High School. I was who I was. I got all these superlatives, I'm like totally confident, not worried about it. Even if it was a town I didn't know, I don't care because that's my autism. My autism is it's illogical to be upset that someone wrote love on their fence.
Yes.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
There's no problems. I always do this in my head. What is the problem with painting your upright piano? It doesn't affect how the piano is played. Yes. So what's the problem with painting fairies and your animals as fairies in joyful colors on your upright piano? There's absolutely no problem.
Love it.
Yeah, and the problem is I'm not being compliant.
Right.
I'm not in the lines of someone else's rules. Someone may be mad at me. And for me, a lot of that, raised in a Catholic school with in the 70s where there was some cool like folk mass was coming in and a lot of that, in my mind, I was always like, well, God and Jesus and all the saints don't care what the piano looks like.
Perfect.
Or they would want me to write love on this. Remember we were all like that time during folk mass coming out in the 70s and
I was a little younger then, so I wasn't privy
Oh, you missed some of that.
But it's so funny you say that because recently my brother was talking about mom and dad and when we were little. My brother said, remember we'd be in Harvard Square? Because we lived in Cambridge. We'd be in Harvard Square and mom would go, stay away from those hippies. Those are hippies. Yes. Don't go near the hippies. Because we were little.
So
yeah. And my brother's like, remember that? I'm like, I don't. She's like, yeah, they thought the hippies
were
bad.
Scary then. But, and when the folk mass stuff, vibe came in, I grew up with a lot of Jesus being a hippie. Jesus was a hippie. Hippies look like Jesus. I was like, cool, I got that. So if I'm going to paint love on my fence, it doesn't matter to me what the other people have to say because I'm not doing anything wrong. It's my fence. Right. Love is a really cool thing to be thinking about. And if someone's upset that you write love and draw beautiful fairies on your fence in your own yard, that's really sad for them.
Right.
I feel that's when I'm like, kick on unconditional love, baby. Flow it to these people.
Yeah, again, it's that conformance thing.
Yes.
It's just they want, maybe this is a prestigious neighborhood. Bedford's very expensive now, and that would take down the value of something. I live on a street that was some old-time Bedfordites, and then it
you're right down the street from where I grew up.
Funny, see? Yeah. And that's turning over. So literally all around me, those houses, ranches were knocked down.
I've seen
and
it all.
And they put up these giant, huge homes. And the first thing these people did when they bought these properties was cut down all the trees and then put a lawn in. My house is the only house on the street that still has the trees in front and no lawn because the pine trees make
Right.
the lawn can't grow. So I have this gorgeous, I think, moss and pine needles, no lawn. And I know it horrifies them that I'm not cutting down my trees. I'm not going to try to look like you all look. So,
Look at you.
yeah.
Now they're not in the lines now, Nancy.
Well,
You're breaking out.
But I think but when there's a cause, like to me, my trees, like nobody bleeps.
Exactly.
Nobody bleeps with my trees. So it's almost like I'm out of the lines because I'm defending my trees. You know, my husband will say, we should take that tree down. I'm like, don't even touch my tree or we will be divorced. Do not touch my trees.
Right.
Like, so yeah, I have this thing with trees.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of popped out of the lines there when you go into defensive.
defensive,
Yeah,
right.
when you got mama bear stuff going on.
Right.
I can easily get out of the line in mama bear mode. For
Excellent point.
Sure. For sure. But it would be nice to be able to go out of the lines because I simply want to.
Out of joy.
Out of joy for me.
Joy and
something
love.
that brings me joy and love. And if it's out of the line, like this podcast, then so be it.
Yeah. So I lived in a neighborhood in Westford and all the houses looked the same and people were nice. I didn't feel a lot of big juicy diversity or a lot of kind of depthy stuff. That is more my nature. Nice. Now, every Christmas holiday season, and it was mostly, I think they were pretty much all Christmas people on that street, Christmas celebrators. The lights, I would come down the neighborhood one day, and it seemed like they all talked to each other, but they didn't talk to me. And one year, everyone would have red lights out. I'm like, oh, is that what my street's doing? The next, they would have... The next year would be white. But no, and I was like, oh. And I would always have multicolor. Like, I would just be like, woo! Like, let's just do it. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd already, as well, ruined my lawn. Everyone had lawn. It was a neighborhood that had been built, tract housing. Beautiful big houses, but everyone had lawn. I moved in, I tore up my lawn, and I put a vegetable garden in front. And I did all sorts of stuff to it. There was like, I'm like, frogs, run into my yard because everyone else has pesticides on theirs. So they already were like, and I had my van that had all these bumper stickers on it. They were like,
That's awesome.
And then my neighbor moved, and this Korean family moved in, and he was from Korea as a child, and so he came over. He came over one day. We built this really great friendship, and it was before his first, quote unquote Christmas season there, and he said, so what do people do in this neighborhood? And he was being very thoughtful, trying to, turns out he doesn't celebrate Christmas. He's Asian Buddhist. Yeah. But he wanted to try to fit in. He didn't want to be too, in this very Eurocentric whitey neighborhood.
Yes.
So he said, what do people do? What should I, what do you think? And I looked at him and I said, I do anything. Just do whatever you want. I don't care. Put anything up that you want. And then I laughed and I said, they have a plan that they don't share with me. I said, so do whatever you want. So every year he and I would just go nuts on our lawns. And his was just wild. He had the big different color bulbs, and then he'd have his didn't make sense at all, but it was amazing.
That's awesome.
And we would do this thing where, and you look in their houses too, by the way, and their Christmas trees would match the lights outside. It was like all white lights, and so we would do this thing. Our big bay windows faced each other, and so it would be like, time to plug in the multicolored Christmas trees, and we just boop boop, and it was so much fun.
So I don't do the Christmas stuff so much. Jim and I haunt our driveway on Halloween.
Yes, your Halloween is so great.
On Halloween they might have an orange wreath on their door, and I've got freaking skeletons climbing out of the and I don't do the Christmas thing, and they're pristine on Christmas, and I don't have so much up on the Christmas, but on Halloween, that's where we express.
Family comes together, we go nuts.
That's where we express. Yeah, I guess so. Moving forward, then, as we close, I think as often happens, we have no plan for where our discussion is going, other than maybe occasionally having a random concept we want to talk about. So now moving ahead, maybe for the week with this concept of going out of the lines, or what?
Don't be compliant.
And don't get labeled. Yes, don't get labeled with a neurological diversity.
Disorder.
Yeah,
Just say like,
I love neurological diversity.
Right, that's it. That's what it is. We're all different. So don't see it as a disorder. Don't see it as something wrong with you. And no, you are not the only person. So if you're someone who's listening and you say, why can't I, like, how come I, blah, blah, blah. Why can't I ever remember where I put my keys? Or how come socially I put people off because I'm so blunt and efficient? You know, you're not the only one. And it's not that there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's about coming up with some strategies to talk freely and openly about as much as you know about how your brain works, and talk with your friends who can maybe give you a little feedback on how you could maybe, you know, do this a little better or this a little better. And mostly though, have friends who get that how we each are uniquely is absolutely fabulous and perfect, and has how we were made. You can't do any better than you're doing. It's how you were made. It's how it is.
Exactly. And again, I'll take it as another step forward, as I did before. Those people with those neurological diversities may very well be better suited to move into this new paradigm.
Totally.
So you have the last laugh, you know what I mean? But not that you have the last laugh, but if you're a kid and you didn't fit in this new paradigm, you may. Not that you want to fit in, but I think moving forward, celebrate that neurological diversity, because it's a tool. It simply may not be obvious where you're really going to get to exercise it, but I believe
you'll find your people.
Set up by design. You'll
find your people, and as much as
it's
we
a strength.
Can laugh, totally,
it's a strength. So celebrate it. All good. And as always, more to be revealed. Thank you for joining us on Expansive Minds podcast, Gateway to Freedom. Until next time, more to be revealed.